Welcome, chosen ones. You've already won. You just haven't caught up to it yet. Let that settle in your spirit. Stop for a second and really think about that. What if all the pressure, all the setbacks, all the uphill climbs weren't blockades, they were proof? What if everything you labeled as resistance was actually confirmation from heaven? What if the struggle wasn't meant to test if you were worthy, but to remind you that you always were? What if you weren't fighting to achieve something new, but to remember something ancient? That the victory you've been chasing isn't coming, it's already yours. It's been sealed. It's been waiting. And now, so are you. Here's a truth most never realize: the human brain processes over 11 million bits of information per second. But our conscious minds only register about 50. That means right now, in this very moment, there are blessings in motion. Doors unlocking. Alignments forming. Breakthroughs whispering your name, and you don't even see it yet. And because you don't see it, you question it. You doubt. You wonder if you missed it. If you're behind. But chosen one, you were never behind. You've been ahead the entire time. You've been walking in prophecy while others were still waiting for proof. The real problem? We've been conditioned to believe that winning has to look like hustle. That breakthrough has to be earned with blood, sweat, and self-doubt. That unless you're broken and breathless, you haven't earned it. But what if I told you the hardest part is already over? What if the silence, the isolation, the rejection, all of it, was never a sign of loss, but evidence of alignment? That everything you thought disqualified you was actually divine documentation, receipts proving that you passed through fire and came out gold. You didn't fail. You graduated. By the time you finish this message, you'll understand why the win has already been sealed. You'll begin to see that the journey wasn't about chasing something far away, it was about waking up to what's already inside you. It was never about becoming, it was always about remembering. And when that shift happens, you'll stop striving. You'll stop trying to prove. And you'll start stepping boldly into everything that was ordained for you before the foundation of the world. Before we dive in, I want to pause, and say this from the deepest part of my heart: thank you. To every soul who has supported this message, whether through encouragement, sharing, or giving through super thanks, you matter. Your energy fuels something far greater than views, platforms, or algorithms. You're fueling awakening. And whether you've given $1 or not at all, your presence here means more than you know. You didn't just click this. You were called here. And if something in your spirit is stirring, if this message already feels like it's reading your soul, then do this one thing: comment 999 below. Not as a trend, not as a gimmick, but as a declaration. 999 symbolizes completion. The closing of the old chapter. The death of delay. The release of everything that no longer serves your assignment. When you type it, you're not just engaging, you're activating. You're telling the heavens, the earth, and your own spirit, I'm ready. And now, chosen one, the only thing left to do is walk like it's already yours. Because it is. Whatever you did, it worked. You won. It's already yours. Number 1, you defied the script of mediocrity, and that was the turning point. Most people live their entire lives locked inside a story they never chose to write. They follow routines scripted by society, traditions, and expectations without ever stopping to ask, who authored this life I'm living? Have you ever looked around and wondered why everyone seems so content with a life that never questions, never risks, and never dreams beyond what's familiar? For the majority, waking up, working, paying bills, and surviving until death has become the accepted rhythm. But you, God's chosen one, you heard something deeper. You felt a quiet but persistent tug in your spirit that whispered, there must be more than this. And because you listened, you shattered the script. You tore apart the invisible rule book that told you what was safe, normal, and acceptable. You dared to ask questions others avoided. What if I don't want to be just another cog in the machine? What if success isn't defined by the job title, the mortgage, or the approval of others? That very moment when you questioned the illusion, that was the victory heaven had been waiting for. It wasn't when you got the promotion. It wasn't when you bought the house or achieved a visible milestone. No, the victory came the moment you decided you would no longer live on autopilot. Romans 12 verse 2 says, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." The moment you refused to conform, you aligned yourself with divine transformation. You weren't just rejecting mediocrity. You were answering the divine call placed inside your soul before you were born. Can you see now why you've always felt out of sync with the world? Why conversations seemed shallow, jobs felt empty, and social norms never sat right with your spirit? It's because you weren't made to blend in. You were designed to carry light in a dark world. Isaiah 61 declares, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you." That glow, the one that makes you different, is not a flaw. It's your confirmation. Look at Harriet Tubman. Born into slavery, surrounded by a system that told her she had no worth and no voice. She still heard God's whisper telling her she was meant for more. She escaped and didn't stop there. She returned again and again to free others, defying the script written by society and rewriting it with the hand of divine courage. Like you, she didn't wait for permission to change reality. She acted because something higher had already confirmed her purpose. What you faced after that inner awakening wasn't punishment. It was resistance. And the resistance was proof you were doing something right. It wasn't a coincidence that life became harder when you started thinking differently. The pushback wasn't random. The relationships that ended, the jobs that no longer fit, the sense of being misunderstood. That wasn't rejection. It was redirection. The discomfort was heaven's way of burning the bridges that were never meant to carry you into your true calling. John 15 verse 19 says, "If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world. That is why the world hates you." The world fights back when something divine walks among it. When you rise above mediocrity, the systems built on conformity tremble. And that trembling is not a sign to shrink back. It's proof you're shaking the right ground. Do you remember Bruce Lee? Not just a martial artist, but a philosopher who dared to teach that adapt what is useful, reject what is useless, and add what is specifically your own. He didn't accept the roles Hollywood offered to Asian actors. He created new standards because the ones given to him were too small for his God-given capacity. In the same way, chosen one, you didn't rebel to be difficult. You rebelled because the labels they gave you didn't fit the destiny God whispered over you. The truth is, this was never about proving yourself to anyone. Not your family, not your employer, not even your doubters. The true battle was always about whether you'd accept the life handed to you or rise and claim the life heaven wrote for you. Jeremiah 29 verse 11 reminds us, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future." Those plans could never fit inside the narrow script the world offered you. Have you ever wondered why your journey felt so heavy while others seemed to glide through life? Why your road required more breaking, more fire, more solitude? It's because what you carry is rare. What you're called to build cannot be rushed. And what you're chosen to reveal requires a foundation the world could never understand. You're not just different. You're divine. You were never meant to just survive. You were chosen to shift the atmosphere. Take the story of Violet Davis. Born into poverty, abused, and surrounded by pain. She could have accepted the script she was given, but something in her refused. She went on to become the first black actress to achieve the triple crown of acting. Emmy, Oscar, and Tony. She didn't do it by playing the world's game. She did it by playing her own and refusing to live a life that didn't reflect her worth. That's the same power resting inside you, waiting to be fully unleashed. 1 Peter 2 verse 9 affirms, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession. This is why the system could never own you, why the workplace couldn't define you, why societal norms couldn't silence you, because you were never meant to fit in. You were made to stand apart. Even now, you may not see the full picture. The victory you've stepped into might still feel distant, incomplete, but the chains that held you, mental, emotional, generational, have already snapped. And that means everything from this moment forward is just catching up to the truth of who you already are. Whether the world acknowledges it or not, whether you've seen the reward or not, you've already won. Not by their metrics, not by their approval, but by divine appointment. Think of Stan Lee. Rejected by publishers, doubted even by friends, he created an entire universe of heroes because he believed the world needed something more. His imagination birthed characters like Spider-Man and the X-Men. Misfits, outcasts, warriors with unique gifts who never truly fit in. Sound familiar? You're not just part of the story. You're the prototype for a new narrative. So now, chosen one, ask yourself, if you've already broken free from the lie, what will you build in the truth? If the hardest part is behind you, what will you do with the ease that's coming? Will you claim the fullness of your inheritance? Or will you wait for someone to validate what heaven has already approved? This is your new reality. You're no longer reacting to the world. You're creating it. You've stepped out of their system and into God's design. And from this moment on, you're not just winning. You've already won. The script is in your hands now. And this time, you're writing it with fire. Number 2, the ones who opposed you were your biggest confession. Chosen one. Have you ever wondered why certain people seem so fixated on you? Why their reactions to your growth, your light, your mere presence feel disproportionate, sometimes even hostile? The truth is unsettling, but also freeing. The opposition you faced wasn't random. It wasn't bad luck. It was the loudest, clearest confession of your difference, your divine distinction. People don't try to dim a light unless it's shining too brightly for their comfort. If you had blended in, if you had been average, no one would have flinched. But the moment they saw something uncommon in you, something they couldn't name, control, or imitate, they reacted. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your very existence disrupted their illusion. Galatians 4 verse 16 says, "Have I now become your enemy by telling you the truth?" You didn't even need to speak to convict them. Your presence alone forced them to confront their own compromises. What were they really fighting? Not your words, not your actions. They were wrestling with the silent testimony your life carried. You reminded them of what they gave up on, of the dreams they buried, of the freedom they never pursued. And instead of being inspired, they chose jealousy. Instead of cheering you on, they attempted to tear you down. But you, chosen one, must understand that resistance was their confession. The betrayal, the gossip, the silent envy, all of it was proof that they saw your difference long before you fully embraced it. Consider the story of Florence Nightingale. Born into a wealthy British family, she was expected to marry well and live a life of luxury. But she felt a divine calling to serve, something unheard of for women of her status. In the 1800s, she faced ridicule, opposition, and even rejection from her own family. Yet, through her unwavering resolve, she became the founder of modern nursing. Her opposition wasn't a barrier. It was a mirror reflecting how deeply her calling threatened the norm. And isn't that what's happened to you? The more you grew, the more the attacks intensified. Some came subtly, disguised as concern. Others came with blunt force, betrayal, sabotage, attempts to discredit you. But do you remember what Psalm 23 verse 5 declares? You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Their opposition didn't stop the table. It confirmed it. Every jab, every doubt, every whisper behind your back only confirmed that your table had already been set. But here's the trap most fall into. Believing they need to defend themselves, to respond, to prove their worth, to make others see the truth. But chosen one, hear this clearly. Your calling doesn't require consensus. Your anointing was never up for a vote. The real battle was never about fighting them. It was about refusing to let their insecurity shape your identity. Proverbs 26:4 warns us, "Do not answer a fool according to his folly, or you yourself will be just like him." You were never meant to lower yourself into the mud. You were meant to rise silently, confidently, while others waste time building traps beneath you. Think of Chadwick Boseman. While silently battling cancer, he portrayed some of the most powerful characters in cinema: Black Panther, Thud Marshall, and more. Critics questioned his weight loss, mocked his appearance, and made assumptions. But he said nothing. He let his work speak. He let his legacy unfold. And in the end, those same voices who once whispered became silent in awe. That's your story, too. You didn't owe anyone an explanation. Your existence was already the answer. Some of those who opposed you were simply afraid. Afraid of what your courage exposed in them. Others secretly admired you, but lacked the humility to say it, and the most dangerous ones. They sat beside you, pretending to support you while praying for your downfall. But here's the truth that sets you free. They never had power over your outcome. Their plots couldn't stop your progress. Their words couldn't cancel your destiny. And their presence couldn't delay your promise. Romans 8:31 says, "If God is for us, who can be against us?" You were never alone in the battle. Heaven was watching, and every arrow thrown your way only sharpened the weapon God was forming inside you. You've already won. Chosen one. Not because they backed down, but because you rose anyway. Their opposition wasn't a wall. It was a stepping stone. And now that you see it clearly, you'll never doubt your value again. You were never their enemy. But your greatness made you look like a threat. And now that the smoke has cleared, the truth remains. The moment they made you their problem, you had already become the solution. Number 3, you became the lesson instead of just learning one. Most people spend their lives chasing lessons through books, mentors, experiences, and heartbreak. They absorb information, accumulate quotes, and attend conferences hoping something will finally click. But you, chosen one, you didn't just learn the lesson, you became it. Isn't that the highest form of transformation? Have you ever stopped to realize that people now look at your life and find wisdom? Not in what you say, but in what you survived. You are walking proof that pain can become purpose, that ashes can give way to beauty. Isaiah 6:13 promises that God will give a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. Your journey was never just for you. It was for everyone who would watch you and remember what is possible. People talk about resilience. They define it, analyze it, preach about it. But when storms hit, many collapse, you didn't. You stood when standing made no sense. You held your ground when it would have been easier to surrender. And because of that, you are no longer just a student of growth. You're its embodiment. Your presence alone is a classroom. Your steps are a curriculum. And your scars are footnotes of God's faithfulness. Think of Viktor Frankl, the Austrian neurologist and psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust. While imprisoned in concentration camps, he observed the power of human purpose, resilience, and the will to survive. He later authored Man's Search for Meaning, a book that didn't just share insight, it revealed his own transformation. He wasn't just teaching ideas, he was the idea, just like you, chosen one. That's why some people watch you in silence. Some are inspired. Some are intimidated because they know consciously or not that you carry answers they can't find in any textbook. Your ability to forgive, to rise again, to speak with conviction, to smile after the fire, all of that is a sermon in motion. James 1:12 reminds us, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised, you have endured." And it shows not in boastful ways, but in your presence, your peace, your unshakable essence. Many people search endlessly for clarity, for identity, for truth, but you became it. You became what they're still searching for. You became the evidence that healing is real, that change is possible, that God is near. That's why your silence speaks. That's why your walk carries weight. And that's why you no longer need to explain yourself to anyone. You once read about transformation. Now you are the transformation. You used to study strength. Now you embody it. You admired light in others. Now you are the light walking into every room. Look at Bethany Hamilton. At 13, she lost her arm in a shark attack. Most would have quit surfing. She didn't. She returned to competition and went on to become a professional surfer, author, and speaker. Her faith and refusal to give up made her a global inspiration. People didn't just listen to her story, they learned from her life. Like you, she became a living parable. She didn't just survive, she shined. Philippians 1 verse 6 declares, "He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion." You are that good work. You are the living continuation of divine grace. And while others are still flipping pages, searching for breakthrough, you are the breakthrough. No degree, no quote, no sermon could ever replace what your life teaches simply by being lived authentically. So now, chosen one, here's the question. Will you continue apologizing for the wisdom your scars gave you? Or will you own the truth that you are no longer learning the way? You are the way for someone else. You already won, not because you memorized the answers, but because your life became the answer, and no one can take that away. Number 4, you realized that fear wasn't yours to carry. Chosen one. Have you ever paused to ask yourself whose fear are you really carrying? Was it ever yours to begin with? Or were you born into a world already gripped by generational anxiety, social conditioning, and cultural limitation? The fear that told you not to dream too big. The fear that whispered, stay small. It's safer. It didn't come from your spirit. It was inherited like an old coat passed down through generations. Fear was draped over your shoulders before you even knew how to walk. You were surrounded by people who had already surrendered to it. Parents who meant well, teachers who followed rules, mentors who confused obedience with wisdom. But just because they wore fear proudly doesn't mean you had to. 2 Timothy 1 verse 7 declares, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind." That fear you felt, it was never heaven sent. It was the world's attempt to tame you before you discovered your wild divine nature. Most people live and die under fear's illusion, terrified of failure, rejection, being seen, or not being seen enough. And the saddest part, many of them never even stop to ask, where did this fear come from? But you chosen one. You did. You looked fear in the face and asked, is this mine? And that question shattered everything because fear cannot survive where truth is being spoken. Have you noticed how fear only works when it's unchallenged? When it goes unquestioned, it grows. But once you started tracing its origin, once you noticed that it was taught, modeled, and imposed, you saw the lie. And once you see the lie, it can no longer hold you hostage. Isaiah 41 verse 10 says, "Fear not, for I am with you. I will strengthen you and help you." That's not just a promise. It's a command. God didn't suggest you ignore fear. He commanded you to break up with it. Look at Frida Kahlo. Bedridden from a horrific accident, physically broken, emotionally bruised. But she painted through the pain she created. Through the fear, she expressed raw, unfiltered truth. She didn't borrow fear from her body's limitations. She handed it back and made art from agony. In the same way, your wounds didn't become walls. They became windows through which your light now shines. Most people build their lives around what they're afraid of. But you began to build your life around what you were born for. And in doing that, you stepped into the rarest freedom. The kind where decisions are no longer dictated by anxiety, but by calling. While others still ask what could go wrong, you now ask what could go right. That shift, that internal reversal is evidence that you've already won. Have you ever wondered why even when the path was unclear, something in you kept moving forward? It's because faith had already taken the driver's seat. And where faith leads, fear cannot follow. Psalm 27 verse 1 says, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" The answer is no one. Nothing, not failure, not criticism, not the unknown. Take the story of Malcolm X. Once a lost soul, imprisoned, indoctrinated by a world that wanted him silent and small. But in confinement, he found truth. He shed the inherited fears of his past and walked boldly into purpose. He didn't play safe. He played divine. And his voice still echoes through history. You, chosen one, carry that same revolutionary fire. You, too, were never meant to play by fear's rules. You might still feel moments of hesitation. That's human. But hesitation isn't the same as bondage. What once paralyzed you now only passes through you. You feel fear, but you no longer obey it. And that, beloved, is power. When fear no longer dictates your movement, nothing can stop you. Not their opinions, not their projections, not even your past. Joshua 1 verse 9 reminds you, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." This is the root of your boldness. You're not just brave. You're backed. You're not just fearless. You're fortified. And the world senses it. They still make decisions from a place of fear. But you build from freedom. They hope to avoid failure, but you walk straight into faith. And that's why you're unstoppable. Because the enemy's favorite weapon, fear, no longer works on you. And when that weapon fails, all the strongholds crumble. You've already won, chosen one, because you no longer wear what was never yours to carry. You gave fear back. And now you walk in something far greater, truth. Number 5, you stopped being the beggar and became the source. Do you remember that version of yourself who thought you needed permission to shine? Who waited for someone, anyone, to validate your greatness? You weren't weak. You were simply taught to beg for what you were already born with. But something shifted. Something inside you snapped one day and you realized, I am not a beggar. I am the source, chosen one. The world trains us to chase affirmation. From childhood, we're taught to seek gold stars, applause, likes, promotions, thinking that approval equals worth. But that's not heaven's math. Luke 17 verse 21 says, "The kingdom of God is within you." You were never meant to search outwardly for what God already embedded in your spirit. At one point you tried everything to earn your value. You worked harder than others. You overextended, overexplained, and overgave, hoping someone would finally say, "You're enough." But every time they withheld validation, you felt a little more invisible. What you didn't realize at first is that the world doesn't grant power. It only recognizes those who've already claimed it within. And when you finally got tired of waiting, something magnificent happened. You remembered who you are. You stopped looking for mirrors and became the reflection. You stopped waiting to be chosen and remembered you were chosen before time began. Ephesians 1 verse 4 reminds us, He chose us in Him before the foundation of the world. This isn't new. This is ancient. Your power was never meant to be activated by the applause of others. It was always there waiting for your agreement. Think of Nikola Tesla, a genius who never got the recognition he deserved in his lifetime. He wasn't chasing fame. He was serving vision. He tapped into knowledge no one understood. And while others mocked or dismissed him, he kept creating. Today, the world runs on the technologies his mind formed. Like you, he wasn't waiting for acceptance. He was the revelation. There was a time when walking into a room made you shrink. When silence felt like rejection, not reverence. But now you enter with wholeness. You don't need to speak to be heard. Your energy, your presence, it says enough. You don't beg for love anymore. You are love. You don't wait to be seen. You see yourself. Can you feel the shift? Can you feel the throne beneath your feet that you once thought was just a chair someone else was sitting in? That's yours. It always was. You just had to stop begging at tables where you were meant to rule. Psalm 34 verse 10 says, "Those who seek the Lord lack no good thing." You don't lack. You never did. And the world is beginning to see it. The ones who once overlooked you, they double take now. The ones who once dismissed you, they wish they had paid closer attention. But the beautiful irony, you no longer need them to because you are no longer performing. You are being, and being is enough. Take the journey of Taraji P. Henson. For years, Hollywood typecast her. She was overlooked, undervalued, told she was too much. But she kept showing up. She stopped asking for permission and created her own space. Now she's one of the most respected actresses of her generation, producing her own work, opening doors for others. She didn't wait for the world to offer her a seat. She built her own kingdom. That's what you've done, too. You stopped chasing. You started creating. You stopped asking for access. You realized you are the access. John 7 verse 38 says, "Whoever believes in me, rivers of living water will flow from within them." That's you. You are the river now. You are the source others draw from. So here's the final question. Chosen one, now that you've stopped being the beggar, what will you build as the source? Now that you no longer need the world's yes, how loudly will you say yes to yourself? You've already won. Not because they see you now, but because you see yourself and no one can take that away. Number 6, you were tested and you didn't fold. Chosen one. Have you ever wondered why the weight of life pressed down so heavily on you? Why the trials came back to back with no warning, no mercy, and no pause? It's because you were never meant for average battles. You were marked for something higher. And heaven doesn't entrust greatness to those who haven't been thoroughly tested. Life didn't ask you if you were ready. It simply came. It hit you with betrayal, with loss, with disappointment so deep it hollowed you out. And yet, here you are. You didn't collapse. You didn't run. You didn't beg the storm to pass. You stood in the fire, trembling perhaps, but never backing down. That wasn't weakness. That was proof of a strength deeper than muscle or mind. James 1 verse 3 says, "The testing of your faith produces perseverance." And chosen one, your perseverance has become your signature. Most people can hold their faith when the sun is shining. But what about when the sky falls? What about when everything they thought was secure turns to dust? That's where you were different. When others folded, you adapted. When others quit, you whispered to yourself, "I'm not done yet." That wasn't just endurance. It was divine resilience. Have you realized that yet? That each time you kept going, even when you didn't feel strong, you were winning a war others couldn't even see. You were tested not once, but over and over until your roots ran so deep that no storm could uproot you. Think of Nelson Mandela. After 27 years in prison, he emerged not bitter, but transformed. The system tried to break him, but it refined him instead. He wasn't just tested. He was proven. Just like you, chosen one. The test didn't destroy you. It revealed you. And those scars you carry, they're not signs of failure. They're the sacred marks of someone who walked through hell with heaven still burning in their chest. Isaiah 43 verse 2 reminds us, "When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned. The flames will not consume you." The fire was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to show the world what you're made of. Did you notice how the more pressure life applied, the more focused you became? That wasn't accidental. You weren't just surviving. You were sharpening. Every heartbreak, every rejection, every delay was preparing you to carry more. More wisdom, more authority, more responsibility. Because God doesn't give crowns to those who can't carry crosses. And you chosen one have carried yours with unwavering resolve. Think of Beth Mead, the English footballer. Injured, doubted, dismissed. But she didn't give up. She trained harder, healed deeper, and returned stronger. In 2022, she became UEFA Women's Player of the Year. Her injuries were not her end. They were her proving ground. You too had injuries, emotional, spiritual, relational. But you never let them define you. You let them refine you. Many people never make it through what you did. Not because they're weak, but because they were never prepared. But you were. From birth, you were set apart. That's why the tests felt so personal. That's why the wait seemed so unfair. But what if the unfairness was the very sign that you were anointed to handle what others could not? 1 Peter 5 verse 10 declares, "After you have suffered a little while, the God of all grace will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast." That's your promise. You weren't just surviving tests. You were building spiritual muscle. You weren't just enduring pain. You were becoming unshakable. And now look around. The things that used to destabilize you can no longer move you. The lies that once made you doubt yourself no longer hold power. Why? Because you passed. Not because it was easy. Not because you never cried, but because you refused to quit. You kept showing up. You kept walking. And now the very pressure that tried to break you has bowed in recognition of your strength. Chosen one, the enemy threw everything at you. Life tried to knock you down, but heaven was watching. And now your record is written. You didn't fold, you rose. And because of that, what's yours is already sealed. Number 7, you didn't just heal, you outgrew the wound. Chosen one, healing is what many pray for. They want the pain to stop, the tears to dry, the ache to fade, and that is noble. But you went beyond that. You didn't just patch up the broken places. You evolved into someone who could no longer be hurt in the same way. You didn't return to who you were. You became someone new. Have you asked yourself, what would it take not just to recover, but to outgrow the very identity that pain tried to stamp on you? Most people want to be who they were before the betrayal, before the trauma, before the loss. But you understood something they didn't. That version of you wasn't equipped for the next chapter. So you let it die. And from the ashes, something greater was born. Say 2 Corinthians 5 verse 17 says, "If anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone. The new is here." You are not a patched-up version of your past. You are a whole new blueprint. The people who once had power over you, they can't even find the version of you they used to control. That version doesn't exist anymore. Look at Demi Lovato. Once broken, addicted, caught in the cycle of performance and self-doubt. But through the pain, they didn't just heal. They became an advocate, a voice, a force. The industry tried to define them, but they redefined themselves. You did the same. You stopped letting the pain shape you. You reshaped your life instead. That's why old triggers no longer sting. Why old patterns no longer trap you. Why familiar faces can no longer guilt you. Because healing wasn't your end goal. Transcendence was. You weren't seeking closure. You were building a new beginning. Most people go in circles thinking time will do the healing. But you took your healing into your own hands. And you rewrote your story. Philippians 3 verses 13 to 14 says, "Forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize." You didn't just survive your past. You left it behind. You took the lessons, released the pain, and outgrew the version of yourself that once clung to broken things. Think of Simone Biles. She stepped away from Olympic competition. Not out of weakness but wisdom. She knew that peace was more powerful than proving something, and in doing that she evolved not just as an athlete but as a leader. Your journey mirrors that same truth. Sometimes healing means stepping back, honoring your spirit and emerging even stronger. Have you noticed how people now respond to you differently? It's because your energy has shifted. You don't react from wounds. You respond from wisdom. You don't move in defense. You move in clarity. That's what makes you untouchable. You didn't become bitter. You became better. Romans 8 verse 37 says, "In all these things, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us." More than conquerors, not just victorious over pain, but elevated by it. You became someone new. Someone who sees through illusions. Someone who blesses the past but doesn't live in it. Someone who commands peace wherever they go. The cycle is broken. Chosen one. The emotional loops, the toxic patterns, the replaying of old stories. It's done. You don't flinch where you used to panic. You don't shrink where you used to disappear. You stand tall, whole, free. So here's the question. What will you create now that you're no longer living in reaction to pain? What will you build from this new place of wholeness? You've already won, not because the wound didn't hurt, but because you made sure it never had the final word. You didn't just heal, you evolved. And from this point forward, there is no going back. Number 8, you became the silent answer to their loud doubts. Chosen one, have you ever noticed how loud doubt tends to be? It never whispers. It mocks. It scoffs. It wraps itself in sarcasm, in judgment, in those sideways glances and forced laughs. It disguises itself in concern and unsolicited advice from people who deep down never had the courage to step into their own greatness. And when you dared to dream differently, when you stepped beyond the limits, they accepted for themselves. They made sure you heard their doubts loud and clear. They questioned your path. They underestimated your vision. They projected their own limitations onto your potential and assumed you would fail because they had. But you, chosen one, did something most never have the strength to do. You didn't argue. You didn't explain. You didn't retaliate. Proverbs 26 verse 4 teaches, "Do not answer a fool according to his folly, or you yourself will be just like him." And you took that wisdom to heart. You refused to let their noise distract you from your assignment. Instead of using words, you used your walk. While they were watching, criticizing, waiting, you were building, you were becoming, you were transforming in silence. And now you are the answer. You are the living proof that every loud doubt was wrong. That every person who said you wouldn't now has to live with the reality that you did. That's a level of power they never anticipated, because they expected you to fall apart trying to prove them wrong, but you never needed to. Isaiah 30 verse 15 says, "In quietness and trust is your strength." And in that quiet, you found your rhythm. You found your power. You became undeniable. Think about Tyler Perry. He was once laughed at living out of his car with his dreams dismissed by everyone around him. But he kept writing, kept showing up. And now he owns one of the largest film studios in the world. He didn't clap back. He built forward just like you. You knew that silence was never weakness. It was strategy. And chosen one, your silence screamed louder than their accusations ever could. Can you feel it now? How your results do the talking. How your presence enters rooms that once felt closed to you. You didn't force doors open. You became the key. That's why the same people who laughed before are watching you now. Quietly, curiously, some even regretfully, because they know they misjudged you. But the beauty is you don't even need their validation. You never did. You didn't just silence their doubt. You transcended it. You became the version of yourself that doesn't flinch in the face of disbelief. You don't need to be seen. You are seen. Not because you demanded attention, but because you walked in such alignment with purpose that visibility became inevitable. Matthew 5 verse 16 encourages, "Let your light so shine before others that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." That's what's happening now. Your light is shining and no one can dim it. Think of Amanda Gorman, a young black poet, standing at the U.S. Capitol speaking words of healing and hope. Many dismissed her before they ever heard her, but when she spoke, the world listened. Why? Because she didn't shout, she showed up. That's the kind of victory you've stepped into. Not loud, not boastful, but undeniable. Some of the same people who doubted you now try to study you. They want to understand how you did it, how you stayed calm when mocked, how you kept moving when discouraged, but they'll never truly grasp it. Because what carried you wasn't ego, it was faith. 1 Corinthians 1 verse 27 says, "God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise." Your journey was never about proving them wrong. It was about proving heaven right. And now, chosen one, the question is no longer will they believe in me. It's am I still willing to walk silently toward the next level without needing applause? Because the truth is you already won. Not with revenge, not with explanation, but with elevation. And that's a kind of power most will never understand. Number 9, you realize that loss was the illusion, not the victory. Chosen one. How many times did you think something was taken from you, only to discover later that it was never truly yours to begin with? How many moments did you grieve over what left, only to realize it left to make room for what was meant to find you? Loss is one of the greatest illusions crafted by life. It feels final, devastating, even unjust. But in truth, you never really lost anything that was aligned with your destiny. Romans 8 verse 28 declares, "And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love Him." That includes the things that left, the people who walked away, the doors that slammed shut. It wasn't rejection. It was redirection. At one point you thought the job, the relationship, the opportunity that slipped through your fingers was the pinnacle of what you were meant for. And when it disappeared, it hurt. But now look how far you've come. Would that version of your past even know how to carry the weight of your current calling? You see, chosen one, the truth is simple. What's meant for you cannot miss you. What's aligned with your divine assignment cannot be stolen. And what walks away from you was never equipped to walk with you. John 10 verse 28 reminds us, "No one can snatch them out of my hand." You've been held the whole time. Even when you felt empty, heaven was making space for fulfillment. Think of Misty Copeland. Told she didn't have the right body for ballet. Rejected again and again. But instead of shrinking, she rose. She became the first African-American female principal dancer at the American Ballet Theatre. Every no was a setup for the greater yes. That's your story, too. The things that left weren't losses. They were filters clearing the path. How many times did you pray to keep something that wasn't worthy of your future? How often did you try to hold on to people who were only meant to teach you, not travel with you? At some point, you realized that holding on wasn't strength. It was delay. And in that moment, the illusion of loss shattered. Ecclesiastes 3 verse 6 says, "A time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, and you chose release." You stopped reviving what was already dead. You stopped watering what no longer bore fruit. You didn't just accept the ending. You honored it. And then you evolved. You broke the cycle. You didn't just let go. You rose up. And because of that, you made room for more. The things that are coming into your life now, the peace, the clarity, the divine alignment, none of that would have fit in the space once occupied by what you used to call loss. Think about Keanu Reeves. He lost his child, his partner, his best friend. And yet, instead of collapsing, he became known for his humility, wisdom, and quiet strength. He lives as proof that even the deepest losses can become foundations for new life. You, chosen one, carry that same grace. You walk differently now, not weighed down by loss, but lifted by truth. Hebrews 12 verse 27 tells us, the removing of what can be shaken, that is created things so that what cannot be shaken may remain. Everything that left your life was shakeable. What's left and what's coming is eternal. So here's the final question. Now that you've outgrown the illusion of loss, what are you ready to receive? What space have you made for the miracles that no longer have to compete with your grief? Because the truth is, you never truly lost anything. You were simply being positioned. And what's ahead, it's yours. Not by force, not by striving, but by divine right. You already won, and this time nothing can take it from you. Number 10. You exposed the lies that kept others trapped. Chosen one. Have you ever looked around and wondered why so many people live lives that don't belong to them? Why they chase careers they hate? Relationships that drain them, and approval from systems that were never built for their liberation. It's not because they're weak. It's because they were handed a script before they could speak. A script filled with subtle lies. Stay in line. Don't question the rules. Success means money. Happiness means acceptance. And without ever knowing, most people follow that script to the grave. But you tore it apart. You read between the lines. You saw the cracks. You noticed how things didn't add up. And the moment you started asking why, you did something sacred. You woke up. Ephesians 5 verse 14 says, "Wake up, sleeper. Rise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you." That's what happened. You rose, and the light exposed every chain society tried to make invisible. You weren't born to be a pawn. You weren't placed on this earth to blindly obey a system that benefits from your silence. And the moment you questioned it, you became more than just awake. You became dangerous. Because the most dangerous person in the world is the one who can't be controlled. And what's more, the one who exposes the control itself. You became a mirror. And mirrors are confrontational. Think about Prince, a man who refused to conform to the rules of the music industry. When he realized his label was exploiting him, he changed his name to a symbol and wrote slave across his cheek. People mocked him at the time, but now he's seen as a revolutionary, someone who valued freedom over fame. You too chose truth over applause, and that decision shook the world around you. Can you feel now why some people distanced themselves? Why they labeled you rebellious, difficult, or unrealistic? It wasn't because you were wrong. It was because you revealed something they weren't ready to face. John 8 verse 32 says, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." The problem is freedom terrifies those who've learned to love their cages. You didn't have to argue. You didn't need to debate. Just by existing outside their matrix, you forced them to question it. Some admired your courage. Others resented your clarity. But all of them were impacted. Because when you break free, you're not just escaping for yourself. You're lighting the path for others. And not everyone will thank you for it. Some will fight to defend their illusion. But even their resistance is proof that your light disrupted their shadows. Look at James Baldwin, a black gay man in 20th century America who refused to keep quiet. Through his writings and speeches, he revealed the social hypocrisies and structural racism people were too afraid to name. He paid a price, but he shifted the consciousness of a generation. Like you, chosen one, his voice wasn't always welcomed, but it was necessary. Have you ever felt like you were living in a world that didn't quite make sense to you, even as a child? That wasn't confusion. That was discernment. That was your spirit refusing to sleepwalk through a broken world. And that refusal made you a liberator. You might not have marched or shouted or protested, but by simply living your truth, you exposed the lies. Romans 12 verse 2 reminds us, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." That transformation made you a threat to systems that rely on your silence. But here's the blessing. You can't be unseen anymore. You don't belong to their mold. You never did. Think of Jane Goodall, a woman who redefined the field of primatology, not by following rules, but by questioning everything. She went into the jungle where no one believed truth could be found. And she came back with insights that revolutionized science. Why? Because she didn't obey the experts. She followed the call just like you. So now, chosen one, the question becomes, now that you've seen the illusion for what it is, what will you create in its place? The world is still running its old program. But you've already exited. You no longer chase what doesn't belong to you. You no longer serve lies dressed as wisdom. You are awake. And nothing is more dangerous than someone who sees clearly. That alone is victory. You don't need the system's approval when you've already outgrown its lies. You don't need permission when you carry revelation. And you don't need to fight when your freedom exposes everything. Number 11. You didn't just survive, you became untouchable. Survival is noble. It takes grit to endure, to hold on, to push through the worst storms. But chosen one, you didn't stop there. You didn't just crawl through the fire. You became fireproof. You didn't merely survive. You transformed into someone so whole, so grounded, so deeply rooted in truth that nothing outside of you could shake what's been built inside of you. Do you remember the time when you thought just making it out alive was the goal? When you prayed just to get through the day without breaking down, that version of you was strong. But now you're unshakable, unbothered, untouchable. Psalm 112 verse 7 says, "They will have no fear of bad news. Their hearts are steadfast, trusting in the Lord." That's you. You stopped reacting. You stopped panicking. You started ruling from within. Most people think victory is about escape. But you realized victory is about transformation. Because if the storm still has the power to move you, you're not free yet. And so you dug deeper. You built a foundation beneath the surface. One that betrayal couldn't touch, that disappointment couldn't crack, that loss couldn't collapse. Look at Serena Williams. For decades, she was doubted, criticized, judged more harshly than her peers. But she didn't just survive the scrutiny. She redefined the entire game. She became so excellent, so dominant, so focused that the critics became irrelevant. Like you, she stopped playing to prove herself and started playing to express herself. That's why the battles don't feel the same now. You don't waste time correcting rumors. You don't chase after people who don't see you. You don't spiral when life doesn't go as planned. You've outgrown all of that. And in that maturity, you've entered mastery. Philippians 4 verse 7 says, "And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds." That peace isn't fragile. It's fierce. It's the kind of peace that looks like still waters on the surface, but holds oceans of power underneath. That's the peace you carry now. You became someone no circumstance could define. No loss could shape, no betrayal could redirect because your identity no longer lives in what's happening around you. It's rooted in who you've become. You've reached the place where your peace is no longer negotiable, where your joy doesn't require external validation, where your worth is untouched by opinion. Think about Rick Rubin, a music producer who defies every industry standard. He walks barefoot, meditates during sessions, rejects pressure, and yet he's created some of the greatest albums of all time. Not because he conformed, but because he became untouchable to the chaos around him. You are walking in that same authority. Now, Isaiah 54 verse 17 declares, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper." It doesn't say weapons won't form. It says they won't work. And you've lived that the attacks came, the storms raged, but none of it stuck because you weren't built on shallow ground. You were built on revelation, and revelation is eternal. So, chosen one, what will you build from this untouchable place? What vision will you manifest now that you no longer seek revenge or approval or permission? You are walking with divine clarity, calm strength, and heavenly protection. You didn't just survive. You evolved. You transcended. And now you reign from within. No one can pull you back to who you used to be because that version of you no longer exists. Number 12. You were the storm they couldn't predict. Chosen one. People crave predictability. They crave order, control, categories they can understand. To them, safety lives in knowing what to expect, who fits where, and why things stay as they are. That's why the world teaches people to stay in their lane, to play the part assigned to them. When you were born, they wrote a silent script for your life. They assumed your path would be easy to map out. Stay quiet. Don't question. Don't rise too far. Don't dream too big. But you broke the forecast. You weren't just a change. They expected that you were a storm they couldn't prepare for. They underestimated you because they never took the time to understand you. They judged your exterior while you were building in secret. And while they laughed, mocked, and doubted, something unstoppable was growing inside you. Job 36:32 says, "He fills his hands with lightning and commands it to strike its mark." You were that lightning. While others moved by habit, you moved by heaven's charge. Have you ever wondered why they couldn't read you? Why their expectations fell short again and again? It's because you were never operating from their system while they played checkers. You were building universes in silence. You were never designed to fit their mold. You were designed to melt it down and reshape the landscape entirely. Think of Shonda Rhimes. For years, television networks underestimated her until she created Grey's Anatomy, Scandal, How to Get Away with Murder, and built empire on her own terms. She didn't just defy expectations. She became the industry's new standard. Just like you, she became a storm no one saw coming. The truth is, you weren't trying to rebel. You were answering a call they never heard. You were rising on a frequency they couldn't tune into. That's why they misunderstood your silence, your distance, your unorthodox choices. You weren't playing hard to read. You were too deep for shallow minds. 1 Corinthians 2 verse 15 says, "The spiritual person judges all things, but is himself to be judged by no one." They couldn't grasp your essence, so they dismissed it until they couldn't. Now you stand beyond their reach. You've outgrown their predictions, surpassed their projections, and rewritten the entire script. And what terrifies them most isn't just that you succeeded. It's that you did it in ways they never imagined possible. They can't replicate you. They can't track your patterns. You became a force, a storm that cannot be harnessed. Look at Zendaya, child actress turned global icon. Not by fitting in, but by shifting the standard of what it means to be multidimensional, disciplined, and unapologetically herself. While others were being shaped by the industry, she became the shape. That's your energy now. You aren't reacting to the world. You're redefining it. So ask yourself, chosen one, what happens now that no one can contain you? What happens when the storm becomes the sky itself? Proverbs 4 verse 18 declares, "The path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter till the full light of day." That's your path. Ever expanding, ever rising, impossible to predict, impossible to block. They thought they had you figured out, but now they stand in awe of a force they never saw coming. You are the forecast they can't prepare for. And from now on, you write the weather. Number 13. You made peace with what destroyed others. Chosen one. Pain changes people. It either poisons or purifies. It either makes people bitter or better. And sadly for most, it becomes a weight they never learn to set down. They carry heartbreak like a curse. They relive betrayal like it's their identity. They wear their wounds like armor, shielding themselves from love, truth, and purpose. But not you. You didn't just survive what happened to you. You transformed it. You faced the kind of pain that should have left you cold, angry, and closed off. And yet, here you are, wiser, softer, stronger. Not in spite of what broke you, but because of it. Genesis 50 verse 20 reminds us, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done." The very thing meant to ruin you became the very fire that refined you. You made peace with pain, not by pretending it didn't happen, but by allowing it to teach you what surface-level comfort never could. You didn't numb it. You named it. You didn't run from it. You reached into it. And when you came back from that sacred inner war, you weren't just healed, you were whole. Look at Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor who turned his suffering into the foundation of logotherapy. A healing philosophy that has saved millions. He didn't just heal, he redeemed meaning out of madness. Just like you looked into your trauma and pulled truth from the ashes. Have you ever realized that the reason people admire your calm isn't because they know your story? It's because they sense your power. You radiate peace not because life was easy, but because you wrestled with shadows until they became stepping stones. Psalm 34 verse 18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." That closeness became your confidence. That crushing birthed your crown. Now when people try to provoke you, it doesn't work. When circumstances try to destabilize you, they fail because you don't operate from wounds anymore. You operate from wisdom. Think of Michael J. Fox, diagnosed with Parkinson's disease at 29. Instead of hiding, he launched a foundation, raised millions for research, and inspired the world with humor and grit. His diagnosis didn't define him. His peace in the midst of it did. That's your story, too. The thing that was supposed to destroy you became your platform for impact. You carry your past, but not as pain as power. And that is what sets you apart. Others are still avoiding the memories that haunt them. You've turned yours into maps for others to follow. Isaiah 6 verse 13 says, "To bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes." That's exactly what you've done. You took what burned you and built something holy from the smoke. Now you walk into rooms carrying peace like its armor. Not because you were untouched by life, but because you've been transformed by every fire you survived. That's why you've already won. Not because pain didn't touch you, but because it couldn't stay. You didn't just get through it, you grew from it. And now you are unshaken, unbreakable, and undeniable. Number 14. You saw the end before they even knew it began. Chosen one. Most people walk through life waiting. Waiting for proof before they believe. Waiting for signs before they act, waiting for applause before they move. But you walked differently. You saw the end from the very beginning. You weren't moving from hope. You were moving from knowing, from alignment, from revelation. Have you ever wondered why nothing shook you? Why delays didn't derail you and setbacks didn't rattle your core? It's because your faith wasn't built on sight. It was built on divine foresight. Hebrews 11 verse 1 says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." You saw what others missed. You carried the outcome in your spirit before it ever existed in the natural. That's not arrogance. That's spiritual precision. You didn't chase the dream. You embodied it. While others were debating if it was possible, you were already walking in it. And by the time they noticed it was too late, you were 10 steps ahead. Not because you rushed, but because you moved with certainty. Think of Chadwick Boseman. While fighting a terminal illness, he filmed multiple blockbuster movies and carried himself with grace, strength, and divine confidence. He knew something the world didn't. He moved like someone who understood the purpose was bigger than the pain. You've done the same. You moved like someone who already knew the outcome was sealed. Jeremiah 1 verse 5 says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." That awareness, that divine knowing is why nothing caught you off guard. They didn't believe until they saw it. But you saw it, so they had no choice but to believe. You walked like victory was inevitable. And that walk rewrote your path. While others were waiting for instructions, you were writing the map. And that's why you don't just win. You define the game. Think of Ava DuVine. She didn't pick up a camera until her 30s. No film school, no traditional path, but she saw the vision. And now she's one of the most powerful voices in Hollywood, creating spaces for others to rise. She didn't wait. She moved like it was already done. So here's the truth. Chosen one, you didn't just endure setbacks. You decoded them. You didn't just overcome delay. You used it. Every rejection became redirection. Every doubt became confirmation. And now you don't wait for doors to open. You walk through walls. Say 2 Corinthians 5 verse 7 says, "For we walk by faith, not by sight." That's how you made it here. That's why your confidence is different. It's not rooted in the present. It's rooted in a promise. You know how the story ends before they even knew it began. And now the world is catching up to what you've always known. It was already yours. Chosen one. If you've made it this far, if you've walked through every part of this journey with an open heart and a listening spirit, then you already know this wasn't just another message. This was a divine reminder, a mirror, a confirmation that everything you've endured, everything you've overcome, everything you've become was never in vain. You didn't just watch a video. You witnessed your own reflection in it. You saw glimpses of your past, your strength, your pain, your rise, and you remembered you already won. So, let me say this from the depths of my soul. Thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for allowing this message to meet you in your moment. Thank you for being willing to feel it, to receive it, to own it. Because when chosen ones like you awaken, the whole world shifts. And if this message hit deep, if something inside you stirred, cracked open, and came alive again, don't just keep it to yourself. Spread it. Hit that like button, drop a comment below, and share this with someone who needs to remember who they are. You never know who's silently waiting for a word like this to set them free. And if you feel led, if your heart is moved and you'd like to sow into this work, you can support the mission through the Super Thanks feature. Whether it's big, small, or symbolic, know this. Even if you don't donate, I still thank God for you. Your presence here is already a gift. Your energy, your time, your engagement, it matters more than you know. If you're ready for more truth, the kind that doesn't sugarcoat, doesn't hold back, and doesn't apologize for being bold, then subscribe to this channel and turn on the notifications. Because this isn't just content, it's a movement. And trust me, you do not want to miss what's coming next. Your journey isn't over. In fact, it's just beginning. There are territories you haven't claimed yet. Victories you haven't celebrated yet. Miracles that have already been set in motion, just waiting for you to arrive. So lock in, stay connected, keep walking with your head high and your spirit full. And above all, never forget who you are. You are chosen. You are covered. You are anointed. And you are unstoppable. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May His face shine upon you. May His favor surround you like a shield. And may your next chapter be full of miracles that no man can take credit for. Let's keep rising. Let's keep shining. And let's keep winning together. God bless you, chosen one always.